A 9-year-old girl named Annabelle with a strong sense of knowing between good and evil, always believed in protecting those she loved, no matter how difficult it was. One day, on which was supposed to be the happiest day of her father's life, Alex Rawlings, a millionaire who makes a decision that changes everything. As Annabelle watches her dad, who's about to marry Rose, a woman who has been hiding a very dark secrets, as Annabelle steps forward to reveal a shocking truth that no one could have imagined. Her bold move stops the wedding in its tracks, but what happens next leaves everyone stunned. Why did Annabelle's revealing lead to such dramatic consequences? How did this young girl's courage uncover the truth about her father's fiancée? And what ripple effects did it have on their lives? As we about to go deep into this story, to find out more, we like you to leave a comment for us about your thoughts and to know where you are watching from, for it really helps us improving more. As the beautiful light flashed through the stained glass windows of the small chapel, casting a warm glow on the assembled guests on seat. The air buzzed with excitement as friends and family members chatted in hushed tones, their eyes darting expectantly toward the entrance. At the altar, Alex stood tall in his crisp black tuxedo, a nervous smile playing on his lips as he waited for his bride-to-be. "You look great, Dad," whispered 9-year-old Annabelle, fidgeting with the small pillow in her hands. The girl's dark curls were neatly combed, and her miniature suit matched her father's perfectly. But while Alex beamed with joy, Annabelle's brown eyes were clouded with worry. Alex glanced down at his daughter and gave her a reassuring wink. "Thanks, kiddo. You're the best ring bearer a dad could ask for," he said, ruffling Annabelle's hair affectionately, unaware of the anxiety etched across the child's face. As the first notes of the wedding march filled the air, the congregation rose to their feet. All eyes turned toward the chapel doors, eager to catch a glimpse of the bride. All eyes except Annabelle's. The girl's gaze remained fixed on her father, her small hands clutching the ring pillow so tightly her knuckles turned white. The doors swung open, revealing Rose in all her bridal glory. She glided down the aisle, a vision in white lace and silk. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves, and her green eyes sparkled with emotion as she approached the altar. Alex's face lit up with pure adoration. "You look beautiful," Alex whispered as Rose took her place beside him. She smiled back, her voice barely audible. "I can't wait to start our life together." The officiant began the ceremony, his words washing over the attendees, but for Annabelle, each passing moment felt like an eternity. She shifted from foot to foot, her eyes darting between her father and Rose. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like simple nervousness, but there was something deeper, more urgent, in the girl's demeanor. As Annabelle stood there, her mind drifted back to the day her father first introduced her to Rose. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Alex had picked her up from school. His face beamed with excitement. "I've got someone special I want you to meet, kiddo," he had said, practically bouncing in his seat as they drove home. Annabelle remembered how her stomach twisted with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Since her mother's passing 2 years ago, it had just been her and her dad. The thought of someone new entering their lives filled her with uncertainty. When they arrived home, Rose was waiting on the porch. Her blonde hair caught the late afternoon sunlight as she smiled warmly at them. Annabelle couldn't help but notice how her father's eyes lit up at the sight of her. "Annabelle, this is Rose," Alex had said, his voice filled with pride. She's become very important to me, and I hope she'll become important to you too." Rose had knelt down to Annabelle's level, her green eyes twinkling. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Annabelle," she said softly. "Your dad talks about you all the time." In that moment, Annabelle had felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. But as the weeks passed, that hope began to fade. Annabelle noticed how different Rose was when her father Alex wasn't around. The warm smiles disappeared, replaced by cold stares and tight-lipped frowns. One evening, when her father was working late, Rose was supposed to watch Annabelle. As they sat at the dinner table, Annabelle tried to engage her in conversation. Miss Rose, do you like space? She asked hesitantly. We're learning about the solar system in school. Rose cut her off sharply without looking up from her phone. I'm busy right now. Eat your dinner quietly, please. Annabel shrank back in her chair, pushing her food around her plate. The silence that followed was deafening. When Alex was home, however, it was a different story entirely. Rose would ask Annabel about school, laugh at her jokes, and even ruffle her hair affectionately. But Annabel could see the falseness in her smile, the strain behind her eyes. Alex, on the other hand, was happier than Annabel had seen him in years. He practically floated around the house, humming to himself and breaking into random bouts of dancing that would have embarrassed Annabel if they weren't so nice to see. Isn't Rose wonderful? Alex would often say, his eyes twinkling. We're so lucky to have her in our lives, aren't we, kiddo? Annabel would nod and force a smile, not wanting to burst her father's bubble of happiness. But inside, she felt increasingly alone and confused. As the weeks turned into months, Rose's true nature became more apparent to Annabel. She began to make subtle, cutting remarks when Alex wasn't within earshot. Oh, Annabel, she'd sigh, rolling her eyes. What a mess you made while working on that project. You're such a handful sometimes. I don't know how your father manages. Or when Annabel excitedly showed her a good grade on a test. That's nice, dear, Rose would say, her voice cool. But you know there's always room for improvement. Each comment chipped away at Annabel's self-esteem, making her feel like a burden in her own home. She began to withdraw, spending more time in her room and less time in the common areas of the house. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 months before the wedding, an incident occurred that Annabel couldn't shake from her memory. Alex had gone out to run some errands, leaving Annabel and Rose alone in the house. Annabel was in the living room watching cartoons and sipping a glass of juice when Rose walked in. Turn that off, she snapped, gesturing to the TV. It's too loud. I'm trying to work. Startled, Annabel fumbled with the remote, knocking over her glass and spilling juice all over the coffee table and carpet. I'm sorry, she cried, jumping up to grab some napkins. Before she could finish, Rose was there, her fingers digging into Annabel's arm as she yanked her away from the mess. Look what you've done, she hissed, her face twisted with anger. You clumsy, careless girl. Annabel winced at her grip, tears springing to her eyes. I'm sorry, she whimpered. I'll clean it up. I promise. Rose's eyes narrowed dangerously. You better, she growled. And if you breathe a word of this to your father, you'll be very, very sorry. Do you understand me? Annabel nodded frantically, her heart pounding in her chest. As soon as Rose released her, she rushed to clean up the spill, her hands shaking the entire time. That night, when Alex returned home, Rose greeted him with a kiss and a cheerful "How was your day, honey?" Annabel watched from the stairs, rubbing her arm where Rose had grabbed her, feeling more alone than ever. As the wedding drew nearer, Annabel found herself struggling with the weight of her secret. She wanted desperately to tell her father about Rose's true nature. But fear held her back. What if Alex didn't believe her? What if it made Rose even angrier? One evening, a month before the wedding, Annabel finally worked up the courage to approach her father. Alex was in his study, going over some paperwork, when Annabel knocked timidly on the door. Come in, kiddo, Alex called out, smiling as Annabel entered. What's up? Annabel hesitated, twisting the hem of her shirt in her hands. Dad, she began slowly, can I talk to you about something? Alex set aside his papers, giving Annabel his full attention. Of course, sweetie. You can talk to me about anything. What's on your mind? Taking a deep breath, Annabel blurted out, It's about Rose. I don't think she likes me very much. Alex's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean, Annabel? Rose adores you. No, Dad, Annabel insisted, her words tumbling out in a rush. She's different when you're not around. She ignores me, and sometimes she says mean things. Whoa, slow down, Alex interrupted, holding up a hand. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Annabel, Rose is a wonderful person. She's just trying to adjust to being part of this family. But you don't understand. Annabel cried, her voice trembling. She's been mean to me, and I don't think she cares about me at all. Alex's expression softened, and he knelt down to Annabel's level. Sweetheart, I know this is hard. But Rose loves me, and I know she's trying. Maybe she just needs some time to get used to everything. We'll work through this, okay? Annabel felt a heavy weight settle in her chest, but she nodded. She wanted so badly to believe him. However, deep down, she knew that Rose was hiding something darker. And Annabel was determined to find out what it was, before it was too late. As the wedding day drew closer, Annabel's fears grew more intense. She had a deep gut feeling that something about Rose wasn't right, but convincing her father of the woman's true nature seemed almost impossible. Alex had fallen head over heels for Rose, and his trust in her seemed unshakable. Even though Annabel's suspicions were nagging at her every day, she knew she couldn't let the wedding go forward without revealing the truth. The day of the wedding arrived, and the small chapel was filled with friends and family, all eagerly waiting for the ceremony to begin. Annabel stood nervously by the altar, clutching the ring pillow, her dark eyes constantly flicking between her father and Rose. Her mind raced. How could she stop this wedding? How could she expose Rose without causing even more pain? As Rose made her way down the aisle, the smile on Alex's face was infectious. The guests watched with rapt attention as the bride reached the altar, her green eyes sparkling as she exchanged a loving glance with Alex. Annabel's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to shout, to say something to stop this, but fear gripped her. It wasn't until the officiant began speaking the vows that Annabel finally found her courage. She could no longer stand by, watching her father about to marry a woman who had been hiding such darkness. The moment was now or never. With a deep breath, Annabel stepped forward, her small voice ringing out, "Dad, wait. I need to tell you something. You can't marry her." The entire chapel fell silent. All eyes turned to Annabel as she stood there, trembling but determined. Alex's face froze in confusion, his eyes darting between his daughter and Rose, who was now looking at Annabel with narrowed eyes. "Annabel, what are you talking about?" Alex asked softly, his voice full of concern but tinged with confusion. "Why are you doing this?" Annabel swallowed hard, her heart racing as she tried to hold back tears. "I've seen the way Rose treats me, and I know she's hiding something. She's not the person you think she is, Dad." Rose stepped forward, her smile faltering for a moment, then turning into a look of feigned concern. "Alex, sweetheart, I think your daughter is just nervous. She's probably just worried about our future together." "No, Dad," Annabel insisted, her voice growing stronger. "I'm not making this up. Rose has been lying to you." Alex looked at Annabel, his brow furrowing, his face torn between disbelief and a deep desire to trust his daughter. "Annabel, what are you saying? Rose is good to us, and we've been happy together. You need to trust me on this." But Annabel refused to back down. "You don't know the whole story. She's been plotting something with someone. I overheard her talking on the phone about taking money from you." And Annabel hesitated for a moment, then added in a whisper, "and hurting you." The room seemed to hold its breath as the weight of Annabel's words hung in the air. Alex blinked, as if trying to process what his daughter was saying. Rose, now visibly rattled, stepped forward, her voice cold. "Annabel, you're making a mistake. I've been nothing but kind to you. I love Alex, and I want to build a future with him." But Annabel didn't let up. She had something more, something that could prove Rose's betrayal. "I've got proof," she said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small, crumpled envelope. With shaking hands, she handed it to her father. Alex's eyes widened as he opened the envelope. Inside, there was a series of texts and financial documents, Messages between Rose and a man named Todd, discussing large sums of money and plans to drain Alex's bank account once they were married. It was clear that Rose and Todd had been planning to defraud Alex, using their relationship as a cover for a much darker scheme. The text also referenced how they intended to leave Alex financially ruined after the wedding. The room was dead silent. Alex's face went pale as he read the messages, his hand shaking as he clutched the evidence. His heart pounded in his chest, the realization sinking in that his fiancée, the woman he had trusted with his life, had been deceiving him all along. "Alex, please, this is all a misunderstanding," Rose pleaded, her voice now desperate. She took a step toward him, but Alex recoiled, his eyes filled with disbelief and anger. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she continued, her tone shifting from calm to frantic. "You have to understand. I love you." But it was too late. Annabel's courage had cracked the facade that Rose had so carefully built. Alex's voice shook as he addressed Rose, his heart breaking. "You've been using me. All this time, you've been lying to me. You've been planning to destroy everything I've worked for, and for what? Money? Power?" Rose's face twisted with a mix of rage and panic as she realized the game was up. "You don't understand, Alex. I had to do this. Todd promised me a better life. I couldn't let you keep me from the life I deserve. I never loved you. I only needed you for your money." Tears welled in Alex's eyes as the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked from Rose, who now stood before him, a shell of the woman he thought he loved, to Annabel, who had risked everything to expose the truth. The girl who had always stood by him, who had never wavered in her love for him, had saved him from a future that would have ruined them both. "I can't believe this," Alex whispered, his voice breaking. "I was blind. I trusted you." He turned to Annabel, his eyes softening. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You were right all along." Annabel wiped a tear from her cheek and nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. It wasn't just the end of the wedding. It was the end of a dream she had hoped would come true. But in the end, it was her love for her father that had led her to do what was necessary. No matter how difficult, the guests stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what had just happened. But Alex, though devastated, knew one thing for certain: he had his daughter, and that was all he needed. Rose, now exposed, was escorted from the chapel, her plans unraveling before her eyes. Alex turned to Annabel and pulled her into a tight embrace. "Thank you, Annabel. You've saved us." The wedding was over, but the healing had just begun.